is going on, my fashionista friends? Welcome to the Sewing Encyclopedia and another video. So we're going to begin by pinning up the center, pinning up the bust point. Okay. Now I tend to put 2 pins just for stability's sake. It kind of uses the horizontal and the vertical. So, you know, the cross grain and the straight grain, it sort of pins it up and it's more stable because I don't want it to move. So the next thing I would do is go along the center front towards, go along the bust level towards the center front. So that would be my second pin. Now it can vary, but that's what I tend to do when I'm doing something with such a deep neckline. All right, then go up to the neck, the center front and the neck intersection. And then basically what I'm trying to do is stabilize the vertical. So that I did the horizontal first and then the vertical. Now what happens is if you've blocked it correctly and it all works out, this is one of the first things I would do. Right, the next thing is to do the neck and shoulder intersection. Now, obviously, this is quite counterproductive because our neckline is much wider. But just to make sure that I get the grain lines correct, I tend to do the neckline first, make sure that is stable before I do the wider section. So I'm going to cut some off now. Now, please try and make sure that you don't cut too much because, you know, you can, and then while you're going to snip down to the neckline, but not beyond it. All right. Obviously, I'm going to repin it. So now that I've got my neckline stable, and I think there's no more wrinkles left, I can snip a little bit more off, and then if I want, go a little bit deeper. Now, obviously, being a wider neckline, I'm not particularly concerned if I go too much. But I know now there's no wrinkles all the way and the shoulder and the neck is sitting quite flat. The next thing I would do is do the wider neckline points. Firstly, the inner one towards the neckline, towards the neck, and then the wider one. So what we're going to do first is we're going to pin up the wide neckline. As you can see, it's quite flat, which is what you want. Now, because it's a wide neckline and it's a bias grain as you come towards, you know, as you come downwards, you need to be a little, that's why it's crucial to make sure that your grain lines is quite stable and, you know, you got your horizontals and your verticals well lined up. Yeah. Now I'm going to do the armhole and shoulder intersection. Obviously, I'm going to start cutting bits off because, you know, there's too much fabric. So just remember, do a little by little, better to take a little bit longer to make sure that you don't cut too much off. Now, because the armhole and the shape and you are using, you know, you can't cut too much. And, you know, I've done that millions of times. So I'm going to start pinning the armhole. Now you only need to pin about half to 3/4 of the way. You don't need to pin beyond that because the French curve does the rest. But anyway, so as I keep pinning off, I'm going to try and repin certain areas just to flatten out because the whole point is this is going to work as well as a pattern. Now I think it actually works better than a pattern, but you know, everyone has their own way. So as you can see, I am cutting a little bit more off as I go. Now if there are any wrinkles, I'll probably be pinning and repinning. So because of that, the area that I'm dealing with right now, you just need to make sure that you don't cut too much off, one. Secondly, make sure you stabilize each position and pin and repin if you have to. So I'm not taking everything off in one shot. You know, I'm actually doing it slowly. Slow and steady wins the race, I believe. So, yep. Now that we've got everything more or less flat, I have now gone and pinned the side seam. The side seam and the neckline. Now, what I have to do is now do the side, pin the side seam up. As you can see, all the dart amount from the top has been removed and it's come to the bottom. So it kind of works as a right-hander. If I was doing it, I would work anti-clockwise. So center front first, then work towards the neck, and then across the shoulder, down along the armhole, and then the side seam. So all the excessive dart now is at the waist. All right. So once we've done that, now what we're going to do is we're going to try and do the dart. So I've just done the waistline, or in this section the empire waistline. Sorry. So now I'm going to pin up the dart where I think it should be. Now I've actually moved it away from the princess line because I just didn't like the look of it. So because I want it to be slightly more angular. Now obviously you need to flatten out, so I am actually cutting away parts to make sure the neckline, the waistline sits properly. Now, when you're pinning up the dart, it is probably one of the most difficult things to do correctly, because you tend to either pull too much or too little. You can become too loose or too tight. Now, as you know from the sketch, it is quite fitted. So the dart that I'm going to do is going to be curved. In a way, it's going to be curved because you want it to go along the bust. Now, keep snipping away at the empire line that you created, just to flatten out. Now, obviously, you can remove all the excess as you go, a little bit at a time, so you don't cut away and you lose the whole point of this, right? So now that I've pinned up the waist, you can see that sometimes I'm going to repin, and it doesn't matter as long as you think the area is sitting straight and you don't have any diagonal pull lines, because that's the whole point. Being fabric and three-dimensional, you need to make sure you stabilize that. Now, so that has now come to a point where now I could possibly, maybe I'm gonna have to repin the dart a little bit just to make sure I get the curve correctly.